who brought us into existence. He's the one who's given us life, and he's the one who programmed us to die. And if that was the case, there must be a reason. Do you make something like this with no purpose? Look, it even tells you, like the switches are there, buttons are there, even digital. Wow. Do you think someone would make it for nothing? There is a reason behind this complex machine. It fulfills a purpose. Think about yourself, Billy. You have a heart, so do I and so do you, which pumps blood, and the way the blood are pumping, they go through a mechanism of valves, a valve, flowing one way so it doesn't flow back. And it circulates all around the body. Lub-dub, 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 lub-dub. It beats around. There is an automated system in which it fires electric impulses so that it can do this kind of contractions, so that circulates the body, carry all the nutrients around it. So precisely engineered. That's only the heart. Your kidneys, your lungs, likewise, I want to just simplify it, all have a specific set function. Is your kidneys the one functioning to hear? Your ears are made functional for that purpose to hear, and also to make you balance. Because there's things that in which help us balance in your cochlea, right? In a system of the very intricate cochlea. That's why when you have some ear infection, you feel dizzy and you fall over. And we will prescribe something to stop the infection or from dizziness because it acts in the central nervous system and so on and so forth. Right? Your eyes, they're functional only to acquire vision, not to digest food, right? Or to hear. So every part of your body has a specific set function, which is not set by Dawood or Dawood's parents, not by Mansur or Mansur's parents, not by Billy or Billy's parents. They did not have a blueprint and say, let's say the eyes will have a function of vision. They didn't do that. They were not involved in designing the intent of what it's going to do, purpose of it. Every part of your body has a function. Put yourself whole together. The purpose of you cannot be like, maybe to be happy, a girlfriend or a wife, whatever, right? It cannot be that purpose because you are making that purpose. But you didn't make the purpose of your eyes, your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your pancreas, your gallbladder. You didn't make none of that. So together as a whole, you cannot be the one who can set the purpose of your own body. That's why I'm saying it is reasonable then to look for our purpose from the one who created us. Yeah? So it is not unreasonable. Do you think it's unreasonable to believe in a creator?
No, not at all. I'm not against the God, I just don't know for certain.
Yeah. So the next question to ask is, okay, it makes sense to believe in a creator, and that creator has to be self-sufficient. Because remember, the eternally existent means there's none prior to that. So it cannot be reliant on someone else, dependent on something else. That eternal, at one point, existence or agency has to be self-sufficient. If you're self-sufficient, you are independent. Yeah? So our creator, self-sufficient, independent, possessor of knowledge. That's what we see in everywhere, the programs everywhere. Possessor of choice or intent or will. Because without anyone willing, if you had all the components laid down on a table, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to get assembled together. You need some agency to will it. Whether a program by a willing human being like Dawood, a programmer makes a program and the robot then assembles it, you need an agency. This universe, you and I, requires our creator who must possess a will, choice to make us. So this all goes in line with that we are here with an intent of creation, and the purpose can only be known from that creator. The next question is how many of those, because you see we're now filtering our knowledge of this eternal, everlasting, always existent originator, okay, which makes sense to us in our understanding so far. Can there be many of them, like some religious people tell us? Maybe there's too many, there's two, there's three, there's many. I would say, no, it cannot be. You cannot have more than one absolute agency or entity. Do you drive?
I don't. I haven't passed my test.
Do you? Right. When you learned, and you're learning, right? So, right. What do we have? Instructor has some controls, like a brake. Must have a brake. Okay? Does he have a, maybe they don't have a steering wheel. Right? Imagine now, you understand the concept. Imagine you have a car, 2 independent controls, left and right seat. Totally independent. Dawood is sitting on the left, Billy sitting on the right. He wants to take the car to the north, and at the same time, you want to take the car to the south. Where's the car going to go? Problem, right? We can see the problem, conflict of will. If Dawood doesn't listen to anyone, he should be able to take the car wherever he wants to. You should do the same. If you're independent, not compromising is weakness. If you're independent and you are able to do so, like the creator who created all of this, possessing power, must be all powerful over everything else. So should be able to do, if you have 2 originators likewise, there will be conflict of will. One wants whatever he wants, would be restricted by the other. But the universe is not showing this chaotic behavior. The universe demonstrates there is a whole organization and control. One originator and control.
How are you sure you believe in the right one if you know there's only one?
Right, this is the next question. Once we know it makes sense to believe in one absolute creator, the question now is, who is that one creator? How are we going to find out? You can speculate about this one creator, but you as a limited, not you, me too, as a limited human being, cannot comprehend the absolute. It's like saying the finite can know the infinite. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to look for now, has our originator communicated to us? And it makes sense to communicate because we cannot know our purpose of our creation by just our limited minds. So we have to look for what we call revelation or communication or guidance. And in fact, there are plenty around, as we expect. So we analyze all of these and start saying, this one says polytheistic concept of God, many gods. I can leave that aside. It's not appealing to me at the moment because it doesn't make sense to believe in more than one absolute. Monotheistic concepts, you look into what they're saying. Who is saying it? If you have a book, a scripture, like the Quran, or you have the Bible, or you have the Gita, if the Hindus believe in one God or whatever, and you look at, okay, who is the person who wrote it or gave it? What were their character like? Imagine a person who tells you, like, this man gives you, with all apologies, okay? And you know that he's not a good person. Nothing is going to touch you and say, why am I going to believe? He's asking me not to smoke and he's the one only smoking. It doesn't make any sense. He's asking me not to fornicate and he's the one doing it. But this brother, mashallah, may Allah bless him, does none of that. May Allah make him a more pious individual, more righteous individual. Just giving you an analogy. So when we look at the people who brought those messages from claiming to be from our originator, from our creator, we have to look at it, the one who's bringing, meaning the messenger and the message. And then we look at what is the message and the messenger. The Quran, like this one the brother has in his hand, tells us about who our originator is, what is his qualities or attributes. It tells us, you should ask yourself, does it make sense? If this book tells you, which it doesn't, one book does, I will name it later. It says the reason we have a rainbow in the sky, do you know why? Why do we have rainbows? Don't give me a scientific explanation. Why do you have rainbows?
He does physics as well. I don't know, other than the fractions light, I don't know.
What if I tell you, a book says, God, the Creator, destroyed mankind one time through the flood. We've heard of the Noah's flood. And then, the ones who was saved by him, he made a covenant with them. And the progeny that was going to come from him. He says, look, after this, I will not destroy mankind wholesale again. Please do not beg. Get a job like everyone else. Right? Thank you. Right. This way. Yeah, you're more than enough to get a job. So, when you find a book says, the reason why, because God then made a covenant, a contract, a promise, that next time I'm about to destroy mankind because mankind is doing bad things again. This is the mechanism that's going to prevent me from destroying mankind again. And what is that? As a sign, a token of my covenant, I'm going to put a bow or a rainbow in the clouds. And when I'm about to destroy mankind, and I look at the clouds, I will remember my covenants, my contract, not to destroy mankind again. Who is the rainbow reminding? Not human beings, but God. Now ask yourself this question. Billy and Dawood and Mansur. Does God need reminding? The one who is absolute. Doesn't need reminding. Because he doesn't forget. If a book said he needs reminding, you should question that book. Is it really coming from this God? That's in the Old Testament. The book of the Jewish people and the Christian people. We are not rejecting the book wholesale, but at least given one example in which we will say that piece of information definitely didn't come from God. Because God, our Creator, is absolutely all knowledgeable. He doesn't need reminding by a rainbow. So we, to assess which God, which concept of God makes sense, we look at the scriptures in their own merit and we ask, does it have things to convince us? Things like, we expect it to give us information about our Creator in His true nature. Not that the Creator came down and He got eaten up because He became a potato and someone ate it. Do you see how absurd this belief system would be? Or the Creator came down and got beaten up by people and they killed Him. It's okay, brother, it's okay. Don't worry. This concept people inventing about our Creator needs to be assessed critically. So it should give us information about our Creator which our heart and our mind would have no problem accepting. It should be in sync. It should be in total alignment with what we consider to be, what we expect our God to be. Right. The book itself, if it gives us information, it should be free from errors and mistakes and contradictions. The Quran actually makes that a principle of how you accept this book or reject this book. It says, had this book from any other than God, then you would find many contradictions within it. That's a falsification test. It's a falsification test. If anyone reads this book and they find, after truly reflecting on it with deep reflection, not a surface reading of a translation which is faulty or whatever, but proper going into looking at what it says, and they find a contradiction according to this own criteria, it cannot be from God. Yeah. So we expect this book, any book from God, should be free from errors and mistakes. Errors of history, errors of science. It should be free from that. So isn't that reasonable? Yeah. The person who's giving it, now look at his characteristics or her characteristics. We believe, historically speaking, God chose prophets as men, messengers as men, because to deliver a message as a woman was very, very difficult to any community, because man has certain advantages physically and with the patriarchy that was in place to say things and do things. Yeah? It's not denigrating women, but it's just the advantage they had, even historically. So these prophets and messengers, what were the characteristics like? Were they of a good character? Were they truthful, honest, reliable? Or were they really someone who's messed up? Someone whose life is not even worth emulating? Do you know, Muslims, we try to emulate the life of our Prophet as much as we can. We take him as a role model, because there's nothing in his life that he can disagree with. Okay? We cannot meet up to his standards. Like personally, he would wake up every night, 1/3, 2/3, he would stand up in prayer to God, to be grateful to God, to be thankful to God, to to ask God for forgiveness, even though he hasn't committed any sin. We can't do that. We can emulate, we'll try the amount of things that he's told to when he has no need for it. Yeah. So what we look at his character and look at all the other characters of people as well. Like some people in certain books, we are told they got drunk by their daughters and he slept with his own daughters. Slander. That's a slander to our prophets of God. Okay? That's what we hear when people say so. So we expect the messengers, their life, the characteristics to be like that. In fact, what a good way of looking at it is, you do two things. Critical examination of this book and critical examination of the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if Islam is true or not. Because Islam is the only monotheistic religion on your table to examine. Everyone else has some kind of elements of associating partners with God. Like the Christian Trinitarians, for example, they've made the messenger, Jesus Christ, Son of God, and so on and so forth. But Islam stands out, your first candidate to examine with the critical thinking. So when you examine, you should, some of the criteria I've mentioned, look at the Prophet and say, okay, fine, what do I expect a true prophet to be like? And what do I expect a false prophet, a fake, an imposter, a pretender to be like? So I have to have a clear understanding of that. Otherwise, how can I assess it? Okay, I expect a fake individual, who pretends to be a prophet of God, to have certain motives for what he's doing. Motives. You can't have things doing without a motives. So either his motive is to personal gain, societal gain, whatever. There must be some motives. So we look at his life and look at and say, are there any motives that is fulfilled? Because he could be a fake prophet. So let's say, okay, maybe. What could be his motive? Did he want to become rich? Because when he came to the people, he's asking, believe in God, not many gods, but one God. Not many gods, part of this God pantheon, but one God. Forget all of them because there is only one God, as we mentioned, one God, worshiping. The Arab society at that time, they made several gods and deities and associated partners with the ultimate God. Yeah? So they had 360 idols. In fact, like every idol for every corner of the Kaaba, the house of God, which was built for the worship of God. So, did he pretend to be a prophet because he wanted to be rich, for example? Did he pretend to be a prophet or, saying I'm a claim to be a prophet because he wanted fame? He wanted honor and dignity. Maybe he wanted women because he was a womanizer, right? Guess what? When you look at his life, when he was calling people persistently, insisting, abandon these false gods, believe in one God only. They one point said, we can't stop him because he was from among the noble of their tribes. To fight him, to get rid of him, in fact, they eventually planned. Initially, they know by trying to kill him means fighting his whole clan, his whole tribe, and it will be a war. And it's not something that they want to do. They want to avoid it. Because he was one of their noble person as well. They wanted to convince him otherwise, but they realized they couldn't. He was so persistent. So he said, you know what? What do you want? Do you want women? Just name them. We'll give you all the women. Do you want to be the king? We'll make you the king. Do you want rich? Wealth? We'll give you whatever you want. Golden opportunity for an imposter. If that was his motive, he should have taken it. Of course, as you know, he declined all of that. He said at another point, even if you were to give the sun on one hand and the moon on the other, I would not stop from calling you to the oneness of God or worshiping God alone. Right? So we now realize this political motives, material gain, fame, wealth, dignity, position and so on, it wasn't his motives. So what was his motive then? Maybe he wanted to unify the Arabs because he saw all of this. The Arabs at that time, we say the Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance. Before that, When a daughter was born, do you know what they used to do, Dawood? They used to bury them, dead or alive. Can you even imagine? You as a parent, when you become a parent, bury your own daughters alive. They did this because of a liability they thought they had on their shoulders. They have to really raise her up, marry her off, give all these dowries to, and so on and so forth, right? Financial liability, economic liability. So, liability. So they found another solution. They take her in the desert and then bury her alive. How cruel it is. The Quran says, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what reason were they buried, killed? They will be asked. Yeah, destroying the whole of their tradition of burying. What did the child do? Nothing. So when the Prophet was trying to unite, was he actually trying to get rid of all these customs and so on? So who was he trying to unite? The Arabs? Because that's what they're doing. But guess what we were saying? He is praising, like the Quran is praising the Jewish people. It's praising Maryam, the mother of Christ, saying she is the best of all the women. How would the Arabs feel like it? What? The Arabs would not be happy because you're saying the best of women is a Jewish woman and we are Arabs. You are insulting our lineage, our culture, our tradition. So this is one example to show how uniting the Arabs would not work, even that was his motive. They will go against it. Yeah. So we now look at all these motives and we say, some people say, oh, you know what? Maybe he was sincere, but he was deluded. Not lying, because now lying is an option anymore. We can't find a motive, because when someone does things as a fake, he's lying. He's lying to say I'm a prophet of God. He's lying to say I received revelation from God. So that was lie. But maybe, some people say, maybe he was quite sincere. He was deluded in thinking that he was a prophet of God, so he's not actually lying. He believes sincerely that he's speaking the truth. Now ask ourselves, do we find any signs of delusion in what he brings and what he says? Because if someone is sincere and deluded, there is some character traits of a deluded individual. When the Quran talks about the natural phenomena, you would expect a deluded individual to get it all wrong because he's just imagining all the things. He's imagining things, but when the Quran tells us about information about the natural world, let me give you one example. Describe to me a mountain. In the briefest description.
Big rock.
A big rock, flat, or is it? Triangle. It's like elevation of the ground. Okay, anything else you want to add?
Very hard.
Hard? Yeah. Uneven, yeah. I don't want you to give away the answer because you might know it. No, there are other elements to it. So all you're describing so far, tell me, were you all thinking about the ground elevation? Were you even thinking about what's underground? Right. The Quran describes the mountain like a peg. Have you been camping? The tent peg, when you put in the ground, most of it is underground, so that you can solidly, strongly hold the tying of that tent. The overground is a little bit. So most of it is underground. And the Quran says about the mountains are made like pegs. So now we understand that the analogy of description, most of it is underground. Is that the case though? Next question. If you study geography, you will realize that is the case. What all we see is the tip of the iceberg. Like an iceberg, most of it is down, and you only see the overground a little bit. Mountains are like that. Far more than what's at the top. So you don't expect someone in delusion to talk about things like this. Where is he getting the information from? This is one example. I'll give you one more example just to at least make you think, to study this book further. Do you know whether stars makes any sounds? I can ask you that same question. Do stars make sounds? Someday, right. They're called pulsars, pulsating stars because of pulsating frequency. We have recorded their frequency and how they sound like. Okay. Before the technological advancement and development of today, is there any way we could have known 100 years ago, even 100 years ago, how a star far, far away from us sounds like? Does it sound like meow meow? I can give you billions of possibilities of a sound. You cannot even use a guesswork. Okay? The Quran describes and says, وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ, by the heavens and by at-tariq. And then it says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقُ. What do you say, what is at-tariq? Just like you're asking, what is at-tariq? Because I didn't even explain to you what at-tariq is. The Quran is saying the same thing. And what do you say what at-tariq is? النجم الثاقب, a bright, piercing star. Right. So now we realize the Quran is describing at-tariq, which is a bright, piercing star. What does at-tariq means in the Arabic language? Knocker. Someone who knocks. Knock, 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 knock. How does pulsars sound like? You should know. Knocking sound. Now, how would someone 1,444 years ago know this information which we came to know today? I'm not saying it's miraculous. I'm just telling you, it cannot be a product of a deluded mind to know this information, which requires technological development and advancement to reach us today. I'll give you an example. I think this is sufficient to point to you how we can assess the character of the individual who's delivering the message. What did he say? I knew it all? He says, no, I don't know anything unless what the Creator tells me to. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. He does not speak of his own desires. Whatever is inspired to him, revealed to him, he speaks. So he is selling this Quran is not his speech. It is only a revelation from the eternal, absolute agency, our Creator, originator. That's all he's doing. And in forcing anyone to believe, he says, فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever wants to believe, let him believe. Whoever wants to disbelieve, let him disbelieve. But with a consequence. The consequence of the disbelief is when you are in the day of judgment, in front of your Creator, because there will be a day of judgment. Because God is just, our Creator is just. He did not make it for no reason. There was a reason. Have we fulfilled it? And when we then account for, did we fulfill our purpose in life? Then there will be a consequence if we didn't. This life is a test. Actually, the Quran says that. He created death and life to test us. Who is best in deeds, best in conduct. Test against ourselves, because He knows, but He wants us to know whether we are ones who are fulfilling the righteous deeds that we're supposed to do in our life, and not doing all the evil things like some people do. Some people choose to do. Some people choose to kill, even though they know, even in their intuition, that it's not right to kill. They kill unjustly innocent people. So they would not just go away and get away. They will have to account, and they will face the punishment or the consequence. A just judge, who God is, the judge of all judges, the king of all the kings. The king of all the kings. King of England or otherwise, doesn't matter. He's king of all the kings. He will just fairly. And He is not going to let the wicked go away, because that will be unjust. Yeah? And when He judges, there will be a consequence of punishment for people who disbelieved arrogantly and rejected the truth. When people disbelieve because knowing the truth, rejecting the truth, they become worthy of punishment. But if someone doesn't know, that's what we were establishing. If you listen, then you will perhaps understand a bit more. Because I'm establishing my argument for you to reflect on. You take it if you like it, You reject it if you like it. I'm saying when the truth is established and you know it and you reject it, you will face the consequences of rejection. Not me. I am not the one who's going to do the judgment. God is the one. Wait, 1 second. Gone. It's gone. It's just an insect. It wasn't a bee or something, or a wasp. It wasn't. Right. So to answer your question, I am not the one to judge. I am only a conveyor of a message, like all Muslims are. We convey the message, you look at the message, and you choose to accept it or not accept it. That is what Islam asks people to do, and that's the choice that's been given. The consequences, of course, is yours. Whether if you want good consequences, you should be serious enough to say, why am I rejecting it? If the evidence is so strong and convincing, why am I rejecting it? How am I going to stand in front of God justifying my rejection, my disbelief? This is what we should be asking for anyone who rejects Islam or the Quran or Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Let there be their justification from it. But we know you would not have any justification. You would not have any justification because you could not even justify against a Muslim Tom, Dick and Harry like us. You couldn't even justify your disbelief. So in the front of King of Kings, Judge of all judges, you would not be able to justify anything. In fact, everything will testify. God will give the ability, or tells us, if your skin, your hands, to even speak and testify. I mean, it was unheard of before. Now we know, yeah, actually, look, we have a device called a phone that speaks. It's not difficult to transcribe and even speak and so on. But God can give the ability for our, body parts to even testify and say, look, he went there and he did this. He took the legs. He walked there, and this is the crime he committed. It's easy to imagine. We also believe we have angels, a special creation of God, that are placed within our cells, recording, transcribing everything that we do, so that in the day of judgment, you can't just say, God, I didn't do that. God will say, there you go, that's the visual evidence. You see that? You can't deny evidence. Yeah? This will be what exactly? So there will be a scale, and God says, whoever scales is heavy and good, and we don't want to be doomed. So our belief needs to be sensible, believable, and something that we need to take it seriously now rather than later. You don't know when I'm going to die. I can die the next minute. No guarantee of death. If you know now that there is a purpose of your life, and I've given enough indications to start searching the truth, don't delay it. I'm not asking you to become a Muslim right now. What I'm asking you to use your God-given faculty of intellect and take one step forward. Start looking into Islam. If you wish, look into other religions. I have no problem with that. And start using critical thinking to assess the veracity or authenticity or truthfulness of this book and of the messenger. And if you find that this is the case, be open and accept it, because that's what the truth, love of the truth demands from us. Once you know that someone is your father, the lost father after all these years, and you're convinced, you're going to give him a hug and you accept him. You're not going to say, let me keep on searching. When the evidence is convincing, accept it. That's what the Quran says. Evidence is convincing, accept it, because that's not the end. That's the beginning. Because then, it's okay. I have water, Jazakallah khairan. Because only then you take on the purpose of your life to fulfill it. Because all that time you were searching what the purpose was. Now you're convinced, and this is it. And I can be sure that that is what tells me how to live our life. The next step is, let me live our life to prove to myself that I'm worthy of God's pleasure, His mercy, His reward. It's the beginning. That's why we should never delay things like this. Take the next step. And in fact, our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, if you are so sincere and you ask God, God will make it easier for you. If you take one handspan to go to God, God will come to you like an arm span. If you come to like an arm span, God will come to you 2 arm span. If you come to God walking, He will come to you running. You understand the metaphor? Your approach, whatever approach you take to go to God, to know God, to accept God, He takes even more approach to guide you, because God wants to guide you, but He doesn't want to force you into guidance. His whole idea is you to come to the realization yourself. Otherwise, what's the point of testing? What's the point of giving a free will? The free will means we have to have enough choice to make rather than compelled to it. So God could have made you compelled to believe in Him, but that loses all meaning of a free choice. So God, what He does, He sends guidance through prophets and messengers and through various ways to give you that step ahead. He has already given you within your heart the intuition about the good and the bad. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. God says in the Quran, He's inspired within you the good and the bad. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. He says, successful are the ones who purify the heart knowing this, and losers are those who corrupt their heart. So within our own self, intuitively we know many things which are good, many things which are bad. He sends prophets and messengers, revelation to tell us, to remind us, and still if we are going to be stubborn, if we are going to be arrogant, then we will be at our own loss. You cannot blame God for it. You have to blame yourself. So Billy, I don't want to carry on talking. I think I've given you an introduction. Dawood is there who can help you, I'm sure, to put you in line with. Oh, this is for you from the brother?
I have one already.
Oh, good, very good. It's okay.
Can I tell you, son?
Can I summarize?
Yes.
Summarize.
Let him summarize.
To take the next step of critically assessing in a view to accept it or reject it.
I will give it a read. I do have one.
Yeah, you have to have a particular intent in mind. What am I reading? Just to say it's beautiful? No. This is not about beauty. This is about truth. If this book is truthfully from God, then you know what to do, what is required of you. If it's not from God, that's what the book says. Reject it if it's not from God. So that's the next step we're inviting you to, but don't delay. Okay, now what do you have to say?
Actually, I was saying that, look, you are just playing, and you are standing here. Why? What's the reason?
It's just interesting.
Because it's not interesting. It's Allah brought you here to listen to this guy. How much energy is being playing to you? This is the moment. This is the moment. If you miss the moment, Allah says that, if you miss the moment, you're gone. So this is the time.
But there will be lots of moments, but what I think in a summary, what you're saying is, it's not a coincidence that you're here.
Yeah, this is
It's not a,
It's not a, could have skated past.
exactly, it's not a coincidence.
This is called miracle. The only way this happens in a life, once in a time, and then when you become that kind of person, whether good or bad or other, that's up to you. But if you don't jump in the water, you won't learn. So you have to accept this. Say, there's one Allah, and there's a messenger of Allah. Only saying that, you are all the sin gone. Or you become Muslim, and then you start, whether you accept it or not, that's it. It is your duty. This is what I learned from here. This is every person's duty to learn about Islam. This is the duty. Because Allah created us and Allah sent a message to us. So we have to. This is our duty. Otherwise, we are doomed. Hell. Very bad. Hell is very bad. MashaAllah. If you say...
Pleasure speaking to you, Billy.
Yeah, brilliant.
Barakallah fi, brother. So please advise him, and you need to behave and represent as a Muslim, inshallah, because if he sees you, for example, doing bad things, how is he going to reconcile? So it's important you be a good Muslim to have this discussion and improve in the understanding of what we've just left there, and you take the next steps, inshallah. So I hope to see you. Barakallah fi, I have water. Barakallah fi, thank you. So, hope to see you, Billy, hope to see you as a Muslim soon, inshallah. Okay? Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
I'm Mansur.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, you can come here.
No, not them, it's crazy.
Can you switch off?
Yeah, I did.
It's the original link.
language of the Bible?
Not in Hebrew.
No, but I mean, yeah, if you don't talk about the Old Testament, talk about the New Testament. Okay, well, sure, the Old Testament. Torah was in the language. No, that's highly contradictory. Loads of people. In fact, the Bible, the New Testament doesn't even have the original language, let alone the original manuscript.
But that doesn't mean that now you can have certainty of the Quran as the word of God. It just means that you can actually investigate the real thing. That's all. So that's all we're saying. Look, there's a stand right there with